Welcome to the Balance Blueprints podcast, where we discuss the optimal techniques for finances and health, and then break it down to create an individualized and balanced plan. I'm your host, Justin Gaines, here with my co-host, John Prover. So in this episode, we're going to do something a little different. I have Aiden here with me. He's a high school student. He's shadowing me for the day. And so we're going to get a little bit of the financial perspective as well as some other perspectives from a high school student on what they're thinking about when they go and look at colleges or look at their next career step. And obviously, John and I have been through that. We've had two very different paths as far as approaching that. We had two very different college experiences, too. I know that we've talked about it at great lengths in our personal lives about how we wish we knew a bunch of stuff that we didn't know going into it and probably would have made different decisions and, just approach things differently. So this will be interesting to see how, flash forward 10 years from when we were making this decision, see if 10 years changes the thought process and the questions, and then hopefully be able to answer them and have a good podcast out of it as well. So,
well, this wasn't my next question, but this transition just seems seamless. So in 2023, there was a 33% dropout rate. And in 2021, 28.2 are unable to find a job in their field of study. How would you advise these people to restart their adult life and progress towards that financial freedom?
So this is where I think people with a degree start to pigeonhole themselves and think that that's the only thing that they can get into. Most jobs that you go into retrain you anyways. So what I would tell these individuals, the dropout situation, in my experience, the individuals that drop out tend to drop out because they were forced to get into college because that's what their school told them to do. That's what their guidance counselor told them to do. And quite frankly, they never should have been there in the first place because it wasn't where they should have been. They might have had a interest and a passion for working with their hands, and they were told, you're going to be a failure. You're never going to make it in life unless you go to college. They go there for a year or two. They drop out because they absolutely hate it. The people that are in that spot should absolutely go work with your hands. Like, you are going to make a ton of money and you're going to be just fine. The individuals that have a degree like the degree that they're in and are trying to be in that field, find ways to sell the skill sets that you have to get into a job that you can then laterally move into something that more identifies and more lines up with what you're trying to be into. But just try to get into a business that has those careers that you're looking to get into. Sell your skills to get into that business and work in some department. And then once you've built rapport and you've shown your value to the company, telling them that you want to try something in a lateral move is going to be a much easier sell than trying to sell them on you as a whole. Once you're in the door, the cost of acquiring a new employee for a business is highly expensive. So if you present to them that you're not really loving the career you're in right now, you went to school for X, you want to be in X position, you see that there's job openings in that company for that position, you want to make a lateral move. If you've shown your value to the company, they're going to retain you and move you into that position. It might not be right away, it might take some time, but if the issue is that you're having a hard time finding a degree in your field, one, look up the statistic on how many people actually use their degree, and you'll find that it's an alarming rate that most people who go and get a degree do not end up working in that field. And so, you're not alone, but if you are in a position where that's the field you want to be in, find a way to get into a company that has lateral movement opportunities for you, then eventually get into that field.
Yeah, mine's pretty short here in terms of I'm going to take a nice woo-woo holistic approach like I normally do. And
I think you should maybe go a little longer on this because you had the degree, but the degree that it would get you isn't the right fit. True. So now you're doing what you're doing in order to get into what you actually want to get into. So honestly, I can talk about theories and concepts of numbers, but I think you have more real life experience with this one.
That's true. Can you repeat the question? It was harder to hear.
Yeah. So the question was, he rifled off some statistics, but there's a large percentage of individuals that went to college and then dropped out within the last 5 years. And then also within the last 5 years, there's a large percentage of individuals who got degrees and are not in the career.
Okay.
Or not able to get a job in the career that they wanted to be in based on their degrees.
I see.
And then what advice would you give to those people? Which I feel like the latter part of that is you, where you have a degree, you weren't advised properly, so what you wanted to go into didn't line up with what you actually had. So it was going to be an uphill battle. And now you're doing the whole re-education, trying finding the right fit for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to zoom out and say it's all about knowing yourself. It's not about knowing. And that's even hard to say because I don't even know how you do that at 18, 19 years old. But I was, like Justin said, pretty misguided from the start. I didn't decide where I wanted to go to school in high school, so I wasn't going to go anywhere. My guidance counselor called my parents and said, you can't send your son to a community school, which I think is completely terrible and overstepping because there's nothing wrong with community school. Ours did a 2+2 program, so I could have just done it for 2 years, save some money.
Well, you probably would have had a better idea of what you actually wanted to do if you did 2 years at way cheaper rate than what you did.
Yes. So that was, I never knew she did that until years later. I was like, that's bad. So I was guided that way. I ended up going to a community, not a community college, a SUNY college, because I guess that's better. So I went to SUNY. I applied very late. I'm saying all this because to show you how much of a roller coaster, crazy, not guided path it was. I went abroad the first semester ever of my college experience, came back, didn't like the school I was at, transferred to Siena, still didn't know the major I wanted to do, took a class that I really had interest in, but the school didn't have a major in that interest. They only had a class, tried to make my own major for it, found out later on that the USDA, the government, they don't really like your own major. That you need to be, like we talked about earlier, play more of their game. You need their grades, their classes. So I just boil it all down to is I didn't know what I wanted. I still sometimes don't. I think it's not about how much money I want to make or what job I wanted people to see me in. I think it's just about what do I want to do? How do I want to spend my time? How do I want to wake up each day and maybe use what I have to help other people? Because I guess why would you do a job unless you feel like you're making an impact? And I am now taking the time. I guess what I would suggest people to do is get yourself in a decent financial spot. If you found like, okay, I am in the wrong profession, or I dropped out, or I have a degree I don't want to use, you can't go and explore or figure things out if you're in debt or don't have any money. So I spent probably time after that of building up some money, graduating, paying off school, and saving up some money. And now I'm in the spot of rediscovery. And I'm not looking at rediscovery in terms of what job, although I am exploring different jobs, but I'm looking at it in terms of like, what do I want to do for a long time? And that always may change, but yeah, I would say save up some money and then just don't be afraid to try new things that I saw this yesterday. That was a great thing is, you know, if you're always wondering what to do or what your purpose is like we have patterns in life. So now that time has gone by, it's like, look back. What do you usually go back to? What do you usually do? Look to those patterns. And then you can figure out your job and how to make money from there. But I wouldn't start with like, what college degree or what job do I want to get? I would just be like, who am I?
Right. Self-discovery. Yeah. And also you glazed over it really quickly, and I want to put some emphasis on here because I do think it is a big thing that you did is you took jobs that, and because we're so close, I can state all of this because I, you know, was with you through it. You took jobs that you didn't like at all, but that they paid you well, and you lived well below your means, saved up money, paid off all of your student debt, which was like, I mean, do you want to share that number? I don't remember what exactly it is, but
yeah, I think I was paying with scholarships like probably 24 a year, 4 years. So like, yeah.
And then your debt, once you got out of college, though, that you just paid off, what was that dollar amount? That was like,
oh, the one I just did, that was just 34,000.
34. Yeah. So, and now you don't have any student loan debt, which is what has given you the flexibility to now. So you took probably, well, all of COVID and this, really since 2019, you've really been working jobs you don't like.
Good luck. It's a great life.
So you've been working for the last 5 years. You've been working jobs you don't like, living below your means. Got yourself into a position where you have a sizable savings, no college debt, actually no debt at all, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you have no debt, you have sizable savings, and you have the ability now to do what you want and work jobs that may not pay as much, but allow you to either self-discover or just do a job that you find meaning in. And that is because you took the self-sacrifice for 5 years, lived through that pain, and now are starting to be able to, reap some of the fruits. And I know that, we're still on a early trajectory on that path, and there's still some plenty of painful days, as I know from our conversations. But
yeah,
I feel like you're finally starting to be able to see the light at the tunnel instead of just digging that tunnel to be able to get you out of there. And I think that's a key component that I don't think our generation or the current working force likes to think about, is they want everything to be nice and easy, bright, rosy, sun-colored glasses, and that life is supposed to be easy for me and just handed to me. And that's just not reality. You've taken the sacrifices over the last 5 years to put yourself in a position where you have control now again over your life and over your decisions when it comes to going back to school, working jobs, doing all that sort of stuff. But if you didn't take the time to put in those 5 years of sacrifice and and it wasn't just sacrifice working in jobs that you didn't like, it was sacrifice living well below your means to be able to have that savings to then be able to clear out those debts. It wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get bitter too, because I look back and I'm like, I'm sacrificing 5 years, but then I'm like, what was college? Sacrificing 4, so that's why my main advice is really know yourself, because if I knew myself before all this, I still may be working very low end job, blah, blah, but at least I have like what I'm working towards. So I'm not saying you can avoid the hard work by knowing what I want and what job, but you at least have that carrot in front of you of like, that's the carrot I want. I'm working towards it because I know myself. Whereas now, like I've done all that to get myself into the position, like Justin said, of now I have that freedom to explore. And I think where I'm really at is like, oh, well, I'll see that light come closer to me once I even know myself more. So if I did that earlier, or really emphasized on what my heart's telling me versus what my peers are doing, or this or that, I'd say that's probably the best thing. I mean, that's why people change careers, they drop out, they do this because they're not listening to their heart, but it's also hard to do.
Right. For sure. I just wanted to highlight a few of those things that you've done that have been hard, that most people, there's probably a ton of people that are going through it, and it's not a good feeling. It doesn't seem like it's the right feeling. You feel like you might have made a mistake, but part of that's life,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I won't keep us on this question too much longer, but I glaze over. You glaze over the hard stuff or the recognition, or like it's been a bumpy road, an emotional road, a lost road. So just ride it, I guess.
Yeah, like you're not alone. You're not alone. It happens, and you learn a lot from it. I remember we were talking about this a little while ago, and I'll say this, and then we can move on, because I think we're both to that point on this where we don't like the sappy emotional stuff. But we were talking about how it's ironic that most of the milestones that society like pushes for seem to be on 10-year delays. We tell 18-year-olds in this country to have it all figured out at 18. And realistically, they're probably not going to start figuring it out till they're 28 or 30. Everybody wants to be a millionaire by 30, which is very hard to do. It's possible, but it is very hard to do. It takes a ton of sacrifice. Whereas the majority of people, if they took a little bit of sacrifice and were very targeted, could be millionaires by 40. And it's interesting that, and I don't know if it's a consumption thing or a sales thing from large corporations, or, what the case is, but it just seems that in this country, we push people 10 years faster than reality should be. And I think if more people came to that realization, they would realize that they've made some serious accomplishments. They're still ahead of the 8 ball, or they're right on track for what, the average person does. The problem is in our 8-second attention spans and TikTok and Instagram, Facebook world, all we see is the person who became a millionaire at 25 or is making $400,000 a year. And like, that's just not the average person. That's not reality. But because that's what we see all the time on those social media platforms, we think it is reality.
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox, but I just, I do think that's another portion to this. But I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. What's the last one you want to put in the podcast?
You're just gonna have to pick.
Told me there was a deadline. Student loans. How do you know when you should and/or stop borrowing money for your college?
So student loans, when should you and when should you not borrow money? Again, this is where I think it goes back to the previous question of, jobs, careers, evaluating whether or not you should or shouldn't go to college. If the average pay for the profession you're going into is going to exceed what you're paying each year, you're going to have a problem. But I also think, because I'm a proponent for working and applying for as many scholarships as you can, your debt load should not exceed your debt load for your degree. Absolutely, in no circumstances should it exceed the equivalent of what you're going to make in that profession. So if your profession, your average income in your profession, and I'm not saying right out of college, I'm just saying average income in your profession. If the average income in your profession is $100,000, you should not, under any circumstances, have more than $100,000 in student debt. I would put it even that is the absolute stopping point. But I would say that you probably shouldn't get in a situation where it's, exceeding 50%. If you're going into a career that generally makes $100,000, you probably shouldn't rack up more than $50,000 in student loan debts. You want to keep that number as low as possible, but the higher it goes, it just means you're going to have higher payments. The interest is going to compound harder and faster on that, and the ability for you to pay it back is just going to be that much more difficult. You're going to be taxed by student loans the rest of your life, and then the income. If you go to college, you get a job that pays you well, but in order to get that job, you had to rack up a massive debt that then you have to pay back. You're not actually making more money. You're just making more money and paying off student loan debt. So your take-home pay still ends up being what it would have been if you didn't go to school, because you're paying that massive student loan payment. Generally speaking, where interest rates are right now, on student loans debt, that is, for every $10,000 of debt, you're probably going to be paying somewhere in the $200 per month range. So if you have $100,000 of debt, you're going to be paying a mortgage. You're going to be paying close to $2,000 a month to pay it off in 10 years. And now you're not going to be able to buy a house. Now you're not going to be able to buy all these other things and work towards those things. So you're making $100,000 a year, which means you're taking home roughly 80, we'll call it high 70s. We'll be ambitious. We'll say $80,000 take home pay. 24 of that is going to student loan payments. So you're only taking home $56,000. Yeah, $56,000 a year is your take home pay on that. Versus if you didn't get that degree and you just went into the workforce and worked your way up and were making $60,000 a year, and after taxes that comes out to say 48, you're talking about a $8,000 difference in annual income as far as take home is concerned, because of the amount of debt you racked up. And so it's just, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, so to speak, if you're going to rack up debt that's going to be equivalent to or exceed your income earning potential. Now, after the 10 years, you get all that money back, and you get that, you pay off the debt, so then you have that spending potential back into your budget. But is it worth that 10 years of sacrifice? That's where you have to ask the question. So from a financial perspective, I think it should be below 50% of what your average income in the profession is. Again, because you might not even end up in your profession, as we've already talked about in those conversations, and you find out you hate it, and now the profession that you actually go into is $80,000. Well, if you only have $50,000 worth of debt because you're at 50%, now that only bumps up to 75 by shifting careers, 75% by shifting careers. Versus if you had 100,000 in debt and you had to shift to a career that doesn't make as much money, and now you're only making 80. Now you're at 125%, and your take home pay drops down into minimum wage jobs, slightly above minimum wage jobs for take home pay. And so that's where I think it's a delicate balance, but I think it's something that needs to be considered.
Yeah,
it's finances, so I don't expect you to have much to say, but
the only thing I got from that was if you know that's what you want to do and you love it, nothing you can do about it. So that's the only thing.
And that's a good point that you make, is if you know that you're going to love it and you know that you're going to go into it, then it's not so much a big deal because you're going to have that high income earning. But what that also means, though, is that you've handcuffed yourself to that career. If you're looking at $100,000 a year career and you have $100,000 in debt, you've handcuffed yourself. Doctors, lawyers that have $200,000 in debt, they can make $200,000. That's fine. But the problem is they just handcuff themselves. If they do not want to be a doctor, do not want to be a lawyer, it doesn't matter. They have to be a doctor. They have to be a lawyer for the next 10, 15, 20 years in order to pay off the debt. Because the other thing is they're not going to be able to afford the $2,000 a month when they first start off. So they're not going to pay on a 10-year loan. They're going to pay on a 15 or a 20-year loan in order to cut that payment down by, 40 to 60%. But now that means you have to make that sacrifice for 15 or 20 years instead of for just 10 years. So it's a double-edged sword there that, the higher the debt that you take on, the more of a handcuff you're putting on yourself for either being in that career or being in a high earning career, versus if you don't have the debt, if you got out of high school, weren't sure what you wanted to do, and went and worked for a landscaper or a carpenter or a plumber, not as a certified in any one of those, but you just were a laborer in that field, you could save up a bunch of money, find out that you either love what you're doing and keep doing it and make all kinds of money, or then go to college afterwards, but have the money to be able to pay for it. So that then even if you get a degree in something you don't absolutely love, pivoting to a different career isn't as detrimental. And it all comes down to how much debt you're going to take on. Now, if you're somebody who wants to go to college and you're pretty certain that you're going to be an electrical engineer and you're pretty certain you're going to love it, what I would say to you is find all the scholarships you can, apply for them, get as much money as you can out of that so that you can make it so that the amount of debt you have is that much less. Take a campus job, take a job off campus, find some way to minimize the amount of debt that you're taking on. All right, he said do another question because he's going to split it into 2 episodes for us. So you get a bonus question.
Yeah, he said he has some good ones.
Yes, yeah, he does.
Quite a few more. We'll go into the diet side for this one, since the other one was
diet-specific question for John.
How would you avoid that typical college diet, whether that be food alternatives or getting money to afford the healthier foods? College-specific being the typical instant ramen in the microwave. And
this will be good. I'm curious to hear your response on this stuff.
That's tough.
How do you avoid it? And if you're going to do it through buying different stuff, how do you afford it?
I'm going to put myself right back at Sienna, because Sienna's food was not great.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Sienna's food, though, to this might be because I love Sienna, but I feel like Sienna's food was probably like most college campuses where it's just not great.
Yeah. The only school I went to that was cool that I visited was Colgate, that they use stuff from the garden they grow. So I guess that... Yeah,
Colgate had some great food. I visited there a couple of times, and it was pretty impressive what they would do there. But I feel like most college campuses have like one spot that's decent, and the rest of it's just average at best.
All right, so to navigate... I'm just gathering my thoughts here.
Yeah, well, while you gather your thoughts, I guess I'll make my comments that you'll hate.
All right.
I would say that, we talk about in our podcast that health, there's a lot of overlap between health and finances. And one of them is that if you have money, you can spend money on stupid stuff because you haven't, it's not going to negatively impact you. Generally speaking, if you're fit, active, and you do a lot of the other physical fitness stuff and be involved and stay active on campus and you get out in the wet and you get out in the sun and do all these things, you can eat a less than ideal diet because you have good health, and so you can spend that good health while you're young and then make up for it once you actually have a good job with buying local and really good things. because on the finance side, I would say your food is something that you can get on the meal plan, not eat off campus, not, we'll talk about the elephant in the room, not spend a ton of money on booze and all this other things that college kids do. Reduce your spending there, because college kids will find $50 to $100 to go out on the weekends. But if they could take that $50 to $100 and put it towards their student loans and put it towards other things like that, that would make a much better impact. And then eat whatever school has for food. Yeah, maybe it's not the best, maybe it's not the most ideal, but if you're able to reduce the student loan piece, it's going to directly impact the ability to afford better food when you get out, and then play catch up, so to speak, on your health in that component. That would be my take on it as a non-health expert, but we'll send it over to John for what.
It's funny because I agreed with basically everything. And then when you were like, it's funny because they'll find $150 to go out, but they could put it to their loans. My head went to, they'll find $150 to go out, but they could put it towards healthy food.
Yeah. So there's the other route too.
So that's the only difference. But to go off your point, as a freshman, you're probably either stuck on campus or only on a meal plan. It's going to be, like Justin said, more about your other activities. Go to the gym, get outside, soak up as much sun as you can, especially depending on where you're going to school. If it's in the northern hemisphere, get sunlight, have good relationships, take care of your mental health. Justin and I got into a lot of conversations about how important is diet versus these other factors of your health. Then what you're going to do is you go to the dining hall, just do your best to, like, an extreme version is go to the salad bar and make your own salad with the protein they have every day. That's extreme. The other extreme is eat the pizza and fries they have every day. So I would just go to the middle and try and do, like, pick the whole foods, pick the yogurt without sugar added, add your own toppings. Like, they should have better stuff there of, okay, for breakfast, I'm going to go get plain yogurt, vanilla yogurt, throw in some dried fruit they have, throw in some nuts they have, just pick whole foods, real food. And I think this is more important. We're not like huge proponents of you have to fast, but this might be a better time to, because they've shown that fasting helps when you're eating actually more junk food than healthier food. It plays a bigger role. So this might be better to be like, I'm just going to eat between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. So this is where, a lot of college kids will burn the midnight oil, do homework all night. They'll be like, you want to go get pizza at midnight. This is where I'd say maybe those are the ones where you can leave out and be like, nope, I ate tons of food during the day. I'm not hungry. Or hopefully you're sleeping, because sleep schedule is going to be there.
It's funny you bring up sleep, because I was just going to say that was my big thing in college is I would never do any work past 10 p.m. And I always made sure I was in bed by midnight. There was occasional nights out drinking and having a good old time that it was at midnight that I got to bed. But I always remember my friends being like, I don't understand how you get all your work done and still not work past 10 and go to bed at midnight. And I was like, and I always told people the issue is that I could work past 10. The problem is that the amount of time that it would take me to do a task if I was working past 10 versus waking up at 7 and doing my morning routine and starting work again at 8. From 8 to 9 in the morning, I could do just as much as I could do from 10 to 1 at night. And it was because you're tired, you're exhausted, your brain's not properly firing. And so, I wasn't even doing it from a health perspective, but, there's that health component as well that just getting the right amount of sleep will also play a huge role in your body's ability to combat the fact that you're eating all these seed oils and, fried foods and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't think about the fasting one. That's an easy, cost-effective, doesn't cost you a penny to do it.
Yeah, and that's how I would answer your question. I mean, food's important, but really focus on the other ones, because if you do it right, like, you can become, if this is what you want, I say this because it's cool to me, you can become like an absolute unit in college. And by that, I mean, sleep well, you live on a campus with a gym, you live on a campus with unlimited food. So just pick high protein foods, always eat protein first. You can't overdo it. Go for, like Justin said, there's a lot of fried, tried to go for the not fried food. And then my only other thing there is we leveled up our college. Once you get out of freshman, sophomore year, our college had a store, like a little convenience store with just plain ingredients. We used our campus money to buy those. You can cook for yourself, or shop at Walmart. It's just ground beef, avocados, fruits. It's a lot cheaper than most people think. It's not seasonal local, but you're going to get healthy and fit off of just going to Walmart and getting decent quality organic fruits, meats, things there. It's still cheap. So I would say that's probably that.
Nice. That was a fun one. What else you got? Send it our way.
I don't have any specific diet since you answered my second question. But
that's good. It means we give a good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at our recording time. I think we can get one more in.
One more,
and then we'll be able to split it in two.
This one is a little bit open-ended, so
Perfect. So that's a great way to end. We're going to end with an open-ended question.
Moving up the rungs of college, my plan personally is community college, private, hopefully something better after that. How do you know when to stop putting money into that dream of something like an MIT or an Ivy League with that moving up process? When should you know to quit?
Interesting question. I would say...
Can I reiterate? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll repeat the question. So he said that his trajectory is do some community college, then do like a private, and then continue to move up the rungs to a better and higher, more prestigious college in that process. When do you give up on that pipe dream? When do you say enough is enough? At what level do you stop?
Let me do mine because it's super quick.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, good.
You stop when you're happy and you're satisfied, and you continue when you feel like you're stagnant. I feel like there's no reason to continue for me if I'm enjoying what I'm doing, enjoying where I am. If I want more because I feel like I stopped learning, I'll go for more.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a good response. I would reiterate the point that I made earlier of when you're going to those schools. One, I'll back up a little bit. I think it's the right approach to take. I think doing 2 years of community college and then going somewhere else is phenomenal. I think it gives you the ability to keep that student debt down. It also allows you 2 years to be able to be like, do I actually want to become an electrical engineer? What does Hudson Valley cost right now? Is it like?
It would be basically free with all the
scholarships. So you wouldn't even have to pay for those 2 years. And even if
Perfect.
you're talking about like $4,000 a year or $4,000 a semester. I think $8,000 a year, 16,000 for 2 years. Like, you make that sort of mistake, you can work a minimum wage job and make up the difference there. So one, absolutely, completely agree with the trajectory. Go to a community college, figure out what you want to do, make sure it's what you want to do, and then jump from there. To me, so you would make a jump then potentially for your bachelor's. So you go 2 years, get your associates, go bachelor's, maybe not even get your associates, but just go into a college for your bachelor's. Your next jump would be master's. So you have the potential of 3 different colleges there. What I would tell you is do what makes sense from a networking perspective. Because just by going to a college, you have access to their network. You go to Hudson Valley Community College, you have access to people who went to Hudson Valley Community College. Now, because it's a community college, typically that alumni network won't be as strong and cultish, if you will, as some different colleges. But then the private school you go to probably is going to have that very network, alumni-centric focus. And then where you go from there is also up to you. I am a huge proponent of not getting your bachelor's and your master's at the same college, though. Yeah. So even if you're, say you go to a private school and then, you're looking at Ivies for your master's, but you don't get into the Ivies and you could just stay where you're at, I'm a huge proponent of moving to a different college. And the reason being is that I firmly believe the reason why you pay more to go to a private school versus a state school is because of that cult-like alumni network.
Thanks for listening to our podcast.
We hope this helps you on your balanced freedom journey.
Please share your thoughts in the comments section below.
Until next time, stay balanced.